Hello, everyone. Welcome again to Software Testing Mentor and RCV Academy. Today, I'm here with Sanket Kulkarni, who is a fresher and looking for a better job in software testing. I have Sanket's resume with me. His knowledge looks very promising in terms of the things that he has learned as a fresher. So let's welcome Sanket Kulkarni. So welcome, Sanket. How are you?
Fine, sir. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm absolutely good. So, Sanket, before we start with this particular mock interview, this video will be recorded. This mock interview will be recorded and it will be posted on my YouTube channel for other viewers. Are you fine with that?
Yes, sir. I'm okay with it.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, let's go ahead and start with the interview. So this is software testing mock interview, and it will be mostly manual and some part of basic automation stuff that I'll be asking from Sanket. So Sanket, let's start with very basic question that you will definitely be asked. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. Myself, Sanket, sir. I have completed my engineering in 2017, and where I worked in non-IT field for 2 years. Now I'm looking for a job opportunity in IT field, and basically I'm from Karnataka, where my father is a government teacher and my mother is a housewife. I have an elder sister. My hobbies are I love to play cricket and I'll read some general books.
That's good. So, Sanket, on this introduction part, the core thing to remember here is that nobody's looking for your personal information as such in the introduction or tell me something about yourself. What they are looking for is what you have done in past in terms of professional or education. Okay. So, like you said, you have done your engineering. That's absolutely good. Highlight any of the projects. So there are three simple rules there when you tackle this question. Talk about the present, first thing. Okay, what exactly you are doing now. Okay, then what you have done in the past. Okay, second thing. So in the past, say for example, in the previous job or in the college, what key achievements you have done. Okay. The third very important point is what value can you bring? So, based on what you have learned till now or what you have worked, wherever you have worked, what value can you bring to the role that you are applying for? Okay. So, say, for example, I have to tackle this question. So, you can say something like, I am currently working as an automation tester in so and so organization, and my role there is to automate the key workflows that are taking too much time to manual tester to basically do the overall processing or overall testing. Now, as part of that process, I have came up with a solution. I have written a utility that helps to reduce the overall processing time or overall testing time from 7 hours to 15 minutes. Okay, so there is a bit of that I have written something or I have developed something which is very specific to the role, right? Now, in the past, I have worked in the organizations where I have tackled similar situations or I have been in the forefront to develop certain strategies and certain tools and solutions to reduce the timing of the automation or reduce the manual effort. Okay, then the next step is in future. So basically, if I get hired in this particular company, whatever I have learned till now, so whatever skills that I have acquired till now and whatever solutions that I have built till now, the knowledge and everything will be a good value addition to this particular role. Okay, so it will be a value addition for you to hire me for this particular role because I know these things. I have actually worked on the field, I have developed the solutions, and this is how I'll be bringing more value to your company and your organization. And it will be a win-win situation for both of us, right? So something like that. So 3 points, just try to rephrase yourself how you are going to tackle this in terms of you being a fresher. So you need to say whatever internship you are doing right now. Okay, you start with that. And in the internship, what is the achievement that you are doing, or you have it. It doesn't matter, achievement needs to be very big, right? Any small improvement that you have done in terms of script or process or whatever, manual testing is an achievement. Okay, figure that out, make a note of it, then go to the past in your college, what project you have done. Okay, and then also reiterate that your skills and expertise will bring a value add to this particular role that you're going for. Is it clear?
Okay, sir.
All right, let's move on to the next question, which is the testing question. So basically, can you explain me the difference between the test scenario and test case?
Sure. Test scenario is nothing but it is a high-level document where it will be derived from the test plan. As in test case is a lower document where it will be derived from test scenario. Uh, test scenario, uh, Test scenario is nothing but how to do the uh, requirement. Test case is nothing but what are the steps to be followed to be while doing in following this requirement. And
Yeah, that's
test scenario can be the in one single line. Test cases can be the many steps as a requirement wants.
yes, absolutely fine. So there are there is little bit of refinement. Your answer is correct up to some extent. It is, like the last step is absolutely correct. Scenario can be one liner, two liner, that's fine. Test case is multiple steps. So basically, remember two things when you are explaining scenario and test case. The first thing, scenario is what you are going to test. Okay. So scenario, you figure out, say, for example, I have been given a functionality. Okay. And let's take a website. Okay. Let's take e-commerce website. And in the e-commerce website, you have registration functionality. Okay. So people will open the website, they will click on register button, and they'll, provide their details and register. Now, registration functionality, if you have to test, you will write or start writing the scenarios first. And scenarios are very quick one liner that will help you what all you are going to test in the functionality. Say, for example, in the registration functionality, verify registration is successful using Google account, verify registration is successful using Facebook account, right? Verify registration is successful using email and password, the personal email and password. Okay. So these three scenarios can be written for the registration functionality. Now, when it comes to test case, your test case are derived from those scenarios. So you have the high level scenario, and now you elaborate those scenarios in terms of steps. Okay. And that becomes your test case. So your
Okay.
answer is correct. Just refine it a little bit. Okay. And remember key things that you are going to mention. Okay. So like I mentioned, what and how. Okay. So scenario is what. If you remember these two things, you will be easily be able to explain this. And always remember one example to back up your answer that your understanding is correct, right? Because definitions, most of the people will say, but your understanding will actually be visible to a person in front of you only if you give examples. Okay. Any questions on this?
Nothing. Nothing.
Okay, cool. Okay, let's move on. So what do you understand by software development lifecycle, or SDLC?
But it is a phase where the development, all development process taken. There are many seven most steps in this phase. First one, requirement gathering. Next one, requirement analysis. Next, designing, where the architecture team will be involved. After that, where our coding process will start. In coding, after the coding process, testing process comes into picture. Next, after the text testing, we'll have a delivery, and for that there will be maintenance for some particular time or period.
Absolutely, yeah. So absolutely correct there. You have, mentioned all the phases of software development lifecycle. You can start with a brief example or analogy. So when we say software development lifecycle, there is lifecycle in there, right? So any anything that is manufactured or produced follows a particular process or life cycle. And similar is true for softwares as well, right? So if you do not follow a certain process, you might end up making something which is not desired by the customer, right? So that is why software development life cycle, you can start with, it's a process to which any development team will follow to make or develop any software, right? Similar to car manufacturing process, when cars are manufactured in the assembly line, they follow a certain process, right? So what will be made first? They'll be designing first. They'll gather requirement. They'll design, and then based on the design, they'll maybe prototype. After prototyping, they'll start actual manufacturing, and manufacturing will have different processes. Similar is true for software. Okay, so all the steps that you have mentioned, absolutely correct. Just
Okay,
add a
sir.
little bit in the beginning to make your answer, more clear. Okay. Now let's move to the next question, which is software testing life cycle. So, what do you understand by software testing life cycle?
Software testing life cycle is nothing but as there will be some set of phases where first one is test planning,
Yeah.
second one is test analysis,
Yeah.
after that test case design, next test environment where the software and hardware configuration uh, can be done. After that, test case execution. After that, bug report. Then final will be test closure.
Yeah. Okay. So, I think you mentioned bug report. Is it bug reporting or test reporting? The second last step.
No. Bug test summary or test report.
Test summary report. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is.
Okay. Test summary report. Okay. Yeah. So, similarly, as software development life cycle, there are different phases. You have explained the phases, but you haven't explained what it is. Okay. Similar to what I have explained in development, testing life cycle is also a process that testing team follows to make sure the product that is being developed fulfills the customer needs, is fit for use, and of good quality. Okay, couple of things: fulfills customer needs, is of good quality, and fit for use. Okay, so these are a couple of things that you can just add
Okay.
and start with explaining what it is first, and then come to the phases. You know the phases, your phases of understanding of phases for SDLC and STLC is absolutely correct. Just start with what it is first, and then, so in what it is just one or two lines that you have to explain. Okay, it's a process that any team follows, and then you come with the phases and explain the phases. Okay, so that will make it much better and
Okay.
more presentable to the interviewer. Okay. All right. Now you have explained about SDLC and STLC. Nowadays there is agile going on, or Scrum. You would have heard. Have you heard about Scrum or different development methodologies?
Yes, sir.
So,
I
do
heard
have
about agile process.
right. And have you tried to correlate, or how you will fit the development cycle or testing cycle into agile or Scrum approach?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, so this might be asked, right? So because nowadays it's all Scrum, okay, it's all agile. So development cycle is no more like a year long development cycle. So the development cycle has shrink to 2 to 4 weeks, and in 2 to 4 weeks, because you take a small number of requirements, which is in the form of user stories. You analyze, you build, you design, you build, and then you test and you deliver. Basically, if it is required, they can also go in production in just that 2 to 4 week cycle. Some companies follow 2 weeks, and 2 weeks is mostly standard. Most of the places they will follow 2 weeks. So, but even though they follow those 2 to 4 week cycle, when it comes to SDLC and STLC, the life cycles still hold true within those 2 to 4 weeks. Now, not up to that extensive level as they were in the waterfall approach, but in Scrum, the software testing life cycle or SDLC, it's all done in those 2 to 4 weeks, right? So you have requirement, you design, you build, you test in the two to 4 weeks, and you deliver, okay, if required, or you make it make that code ready to be delivered. Okay, so that's the overall thing. If somebody asks, how is SDLC in agile and in waterfall, there are changes, there are modifications, but it's not such a big change that you can't fit these life cycles into the agile approach. Okay, clear?
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, cool. Let's move on. Now, the next question is, can you give me the test cases for a pen? Some positive test cases and some negative test cases.
Yes, sir. Verif Verify that name of the pen and logo of the pen as per the requirement, and verify that type of button or operation can be done by the pen is right, well, right or not. Next, ink field in the refill is as per requirement or not, and verify that the length of the pen is as per requirement not. And as come to some negative test cases, um, verify that it is fall from the some height, it is sustainability or not. Next, verify that it is when refill is merged in the water, it can be written or not. And next, verify that it can be broken for a hand tight or not. These are the some positive and negative test cases.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So, absolutely correct. You have covered a couple of scenarios, positive scenarios for pen test cases and negative scenarios for test cases. But now, the whole point of this question is to not ask you the positive and negative scenarios. It's basically when somebody asks you these questions, they want to understand whether you will, want to ask questions to them to clarify a few things, right? So, generic test cases that you have mentioned, absolutely fine. Okay. But say, for example, I mean, you would have asked to the interviewer, you would have asked to me that, is this a ballpoint pen or an ink pen, right? So any clarification. So basically, you before you will actually start testing any product, you need to understand the specifications of the product. Okay. So that shows that yes, you will apply a tester's mindset and thought process to understand the requirement before you come to the conclusion. Okay, so now I asked you write the test cases for this pen, and you have directly came up with the conclusion, and you have given me the answers of positive and negative test cases, which is correct in a generic way. But you haven't clarified any of the requirements, or basically, when I said test this, I'll take an example. Okay, I give you a car. Okay, there is a car standing outside, and I say to you, go and test ride that car. Okay, there is no fuel in the car. So, what would be your instant reaction in that particular case?
Where uh, in, where I first check the fuel of the car, And I'll inform you that there is no fuel in that car.
Yeah. So there is no fuel, but you will also check, because you have to get the fuel for it. You will check whether it's a petrol car, whether it's a diesel car, or whether it's, PNG or gas, right? Similar is true for any tester's role. Now, when you go to testing, you just don't go that you know everything. It's a mindset that you build over the period of time. Okay, it's the mindset of putting yourself in the customer's shoes and understanding the picture as a whole, and asking questions, like same way that you asked the question for the car, the type of fuel that you are going to buy before you can test drive it. Same thing for the pen. Okay. Now, generic answers of your test case are absolutely fine. Whatever test cases that you mention those to the interviewer, but then you ask couple of questions just to show that you will be communicating, collaborating with the team to clarify the requirements. Okay, and you will be coming up with proper set of test cases once you understand the requirement. All right. And if somebody in the industry who is
Okay.
interviewing you doesn't like asking questions to themselves because they are interviewer, you should not join that sort of organization. That's my first advice. Okay, if people in the organization do not want or do not like asking you questions to them, clarifying things, you won't be able to learn anything in that organization. And joining an organization just for the sake of money is not good. Okay, so that's one piece of advice that I'll definitely give you. There is no
Okay.
interviewer in this world who will get offended if you ask or want to clarify any questions or any requirements from them. If people get offended, they are not the right set of people to work with. Okay. All right. So
Okay.
just make a note of that, that you'll clarify a few things. First, if somebody asks you to write test cases, before you go ahead with the conclusion. If person directly, if person gives you very clear requirement, then you can directly start with the test cases or the answer. But if you have any little bit of doubt, always ask and clarify before you go ahead and answer. Okay. All
Okay.
right, let's move on. In your resume, you have mentioned about the Selenium as well, and you have knowledge of Selenium, IDE, methods, operators, locators, etc. So, what exactly do you understand by Selenium WebDrivers? What is WebDriver?
WebDriver is a automated automation tool where we can execute our code and some test cases in order to save our time.
Okay. So, anything else?
Things.
Okay. So now, because in your resume you have written that you have knowledge of configuring Selenium, locators, methods, and operations. Okay. And you have also written you have good experience in installing and configuring Eclipse and launching web browser. So what this means is that you will have a clear understanding of what WebDriver is. Okay. Now, the answer that you gave is generic. It's automation tool. Okay. Now, when somebody asks you about the WebDriver, just a couple of lines that you need to mention is WebDriver is an open source API. It's an API. It's a library, right? It's an API, and it is specific to testing the web applications, only web applications. So anything that you can launch, any application that you can launch on web browsers, WebDriver, Selenium WebDriver will be able to automate those applications. Okay, so you can interact with the WebDriver on the web elements that are on the web page, and it will perform all the automated steps once you write the code. The next important thing that you need to mention, you have mentioned about the open source. It's an open source API, okay, for automating web applications. That's the first line. Second thing is that it supports cross-browser testing. When we say cross-browser, it supports IE, it supports Firefox, Chrome, Safari. So you can write your
Okay.
test case once and you can run it on multiple browsers. So cross-browser testing is supported, and it also supports many programming languages. Okay, so you can write your code in Java, you can write your code in Python, you can write your code in .NET, Perl, Ruby, right? So there are a couple of test languages. So Java, Python, Perl, .NET, PHP, and Ruby. So there are a couple of languages. So you can just name two, three. Java and Python are very widely used. So at least mention those. Okay. So they they will know that yes, you know that, and there is a video of WebDriver architecture on my channel. So what I'll do is I'll post the links to all the videos. So whatever questions I have asked to you, for most of them, I have already created the video that is available on the channel. So I'll provide you the link in the description section so that you can go ahead and see the WebDriver architecture to understand it in more detail, what exactly, how it interacts with the browser. Okay. And then there is also a series on
Okay.
Selenium WebDriver. So you can at least, so because you have written in your resume that you can launch the web browsers, so at least configure, watch 10 to 15 initial videos in which you will be able to configure the WebDriver with Java and write your test case as well. If you know up to that much, you will be in very good position, very confident to go ahead and crack the interview. Okay. And even though it is, even if you write a couple of more things here, because you have already learned how to write test cases in Selenium WebDriver, you can add a couple of more points there in the automation testing part of your resume. Okay. It's not difficult, it's very
Okay.
easy. Just follow step-by-step tutorials and you will be able to automate in like 1 or 2 weeks. You will definitely be able to automate 1 or 2 test cases that I have explained in the series. Okay.
Okay, sir.
All right. Okay, let's move on. Can you explain what is bug life cycle or defect life cycle?
Yes, sir. Bug life cycle is nothing but whenever we found a bug or a defect, initially we'll check it is whether it is reproducible or not for 2 3 times. After that, we'll report to the developer where it will be stated as open. Uh, Next, whenever the developer fixes defect and uh, we'll check regression we'll do a regression test, and based on that, if it is defect is fixed, we status closed, or if defect is not fixed, it will be reopen, where reject status is nothing but defect is not valid defect, where deferred status is nothing but this is a minor issue defect, where this defect will be fixed in the next version, and
Okay. Okay. So
that's it, sir.
your overall process is good. Do not go into too much detail of the whole defect life cycle. Nobody expects you to understand each and every status and resolution of the life cycle. Okay. The whole point of this question
Okay.
is to ask whether you, as a tester in a tester's role, know what life cycle of defect is and how you are going to handle the defects from the point when the defect is found until the defect is closed. What is your role in that overall life cycle as a software tester? Okay. Now, you mentioned that once the defect is fixed, you do the
Okay.
regression testing. It's not the regression testing. It can be regression testing, but it's mostly retesting. And along with retesting, it can be regression testing if there are other components that are affected. Okay, so retesting as well as regression testing might be possible for both in that case. Now, you started the overall life cycle very good. The thing I liked about this answer is that you put yourself into the overall process. Okay, so like you are testing and you will find a defect, then you will raise a defect. Okay, you will try to reproduce it. That's the very good answer. Okay, so first thing is you not straight away go ahead and raise the defect. You will try to reproduce it. You will see if there are anything that uh, are missing from our part as a tester. So you'll try to reproduce it. Very good answer there. Then you will raise a defect. If you are sure that you can reproduce it, you will raise it. Okay, then the defect moves to the next stage. Okay, so that the new stage, it will, once you open, it's a new stage, and then defect triage meeting happens, which will be mostly test managers and other stakeholders. They will give the priority, and based on the priority it will be assigned to the developer. Once the developer is working on the defect, they'll fix it, they'll assign it to the tester. They can also reject it if they are not able to reproduce, but if it is fixed, it will move to retest, and now you will retest. If there is a regression testing applicable, then there will be a couple of regression tests also executed. Once the retesting is successful for that defect, now usually for the defect, regression testing won't be part of that defect life cycle itself. It can be handled separately. So once the defect is fixed, it will be retested. You will retest it. If retest is passed, you will close it. And that's the end of the defect lifecycle closure. If the defect is not fixed, it will be reopened and reassigned to the developer. So you explained all the steps there very properly, and you correlated you as a tester in that life cycle, which is what any interviewer is looking for when they ask for the life cycle. They are not looking for, okay, tell me the statuses, what are the transitions. It's not a software tester's responsibility to define all those statuses. The core statuses that software tester needs to understand is understood by you. Okay, so that's a good answer there.
Okay.
All right. Now, other important thing,
Thank you.
um, when you explain defect is statuses and resolution. Okay, remember these two things. So when the defect is raised and is in the new state, so that's status. Okay, now from the new state, from the new status, it's moved to assigned or open, or to assign to the developer, then it's in the open status. Okay, from the open status it can be closed, and it can be closed because of the reason that it's not reproducible. So not reproducible is a resolution. Then it can be closed because it's not a bug, because it was raised due to errors in the data. Okay, the correct data was not used. So these are resolutions. So once a defect moves from open status to closed status, so open is one status, closed is one status. A defect can move from one status to another status, right? And the reason of moving a defect from one status to another status can be many. It can be not reproducible. It can be issue with test data. It can be anything else. Now, these reasons are resolutions that are defined as resolutions in the defect lifecycle. Okay, so I'm explaining this to just to give you some examples that there are two things that you can also go ahead and read a more detail about it. Okay, so it will help you refine your answer a lot more. Okay,
Okay.
all right. So you have already mentioned about some of the statuses, which is good, of the bug life cycle. So let's move on to the next question. Can you explain the difference between white box testing, black box testing, and gray box testing?
White box testing is performed by the almost basically developers, and if any testers have a good knowledge about coding, they will perform white box testing. As come to the black box testing, it is performed by the testers, and white box testing is nothing but testing and a source code, testing and a source code. And the black box testing is nothing but testing on what our requirements, system requirements, where it matches to the accepted value or to the actual value. And gray box testing is nothing but combination of both white box and black box testing is called gray box testing. Mm,
Absolutely. Any more points that you can add?
that's it.
Okay. Okay. So answer all the points that you have mentioned are absolutely correct. Okay. Now you, I'll refine it a little bit, or basically I'll mention how you will approach this question. Okay. When I ask difference between gray box, white box, or black box, you started it is performed by. Okay, that should be the second point. When somebody asks, what is this? You first explain what exactly that thing is and then come to the other points. Now, if I've asked you what is black box testing, you can start with very basic introduction. Black box testing is a type of testing where the tester doesn't have knowledge of internal code or structure of the software. Okay, white box testing is a software testing technique where the tester has the knowledge of the internal code and structure. Gray box testing is combination of both. Black box testing is mostly done by tester. White box testing is mostly done by developer unless testers are very good at white box testing. And gray box testing is mostly testers. Okay, because when you learn more tools, you will do most of the places you will be doing gray box testing. It won't be pure black box, it won't be pure white box, it will be gray box testing that you will be doing, because you will be learning API testing, and API testing is, falls into gray box testing category, or penetration testing falls into that gray box testing category. Okay, so you can feel the difference. All the things that you mentioned, I mentioned the same things, but in just a different sequence. Okay, so just remember that your answer was absolutely
Okay,
correct.
sir.
No issues with that. Just the sequencing, and it will make a lot of difference. All right. With the
Okay.
gray box testing, I'll elaborate a little bit more. So gray box testing, as I have mentioned, that it is the testing which is combination of white and black box both. Now, mostly when the applications are developed, the application components will be ready, but the whole application might not be ready for a black box tester to directly launch the application and start testing. So there might be some services they are building. So when they services, when we say services, it could be, the APIs basically, right? Application programming interface. So those APIs are there is no front end available for those APIs in the initial phases of development, and that is what API testing is all about. So when you directly call those APIs, you would have heard about SOAP and REST, right? So if not, just read a little bit about that. When you test those APIs, now because there is no front end available, it's not a black box, it's sort of a code. You are dealing with the code. These are the services that you access through the tool, and you work with those services. So it's not the lowest layer of code that is being written. You are not directly testing the overall logic, but it's an interface that is provided to you as a tester to test. And this is the category which is gray box testing, because it's not fully black box, it's not fully white box, it's somewhere in between, that you have the service. You are not testing the overall code structure and all, but you have the service, you are testing the service, you are uh, you know putting the request, checking the response, chaining up the APIs, etc. So those sort of things. Okay, so just take this example with
Okay, sir.
you, that gray box testing, this API testing or web service testing will fall into this category. Okay. All right. Any questions
Okay.
on this one?
Not sir. Okay.
Okay. Let's move on then. So can you explain me the difference between the functional and regression testing?
Yes, functional testing is nothing but uh, where we are matching our functional testing is nothing but we have to check that whether it matches for customer requirements or not. Whereas come as in regression testing, where you check the unchanged functionality of an application is working properly or not. Um,
Can you give me an example?
Yes, sir. As come to regression testing, as in Gmail, for if you are doing a regression testing for login button, you have to check for other text boxes whether it is working properly or not. As come to the functional testing, we have to uh, check it is matches for customer requirement or not.
Okay. Yeah. So up to some, so your definition is correct. Okay. Your example is correct up to some extent. You need to make it more clear though when it comes to example. And I always emphasize the best way to learn anything is correlate with examples, with the real life examples, how you will be able to, if say for example I have to understand functional testing or regression testing. Okay, I have read the book, I have read the theory. Now, how does it actually happen in the real scenario, or how does it correlate with the application that we usually use? Okay, so you have mentioned about the functional testing Gmail login functionality. Absolutely fine. When you are verifying the functional aspect based on the requirements that you have got. Okay, so say for example, login with the valid username, valid password should be successful. With invalid username and valid password, you should get an error message. An error message could be specific. For some other error, it could be some other error message. Okay, when you are testing all these combinations based on the requirement, it is functional testing. All right. Now you have this login functionality, and the login there is the error in the login module or in the login functionality. Okay, so even though you provide the correct username and password, the login doesn't work. Okay, the user gets redirected to the login page. And when the user logs in using the Google, using the Facebook account, say for example, there is a login functionality and user is trying to log in using email and password, and he's getting the error when he's trying to log in using email and password. But if he's using any other social account that he has used to register, he is able to log in successfully. Okay. So there is a defect in one part of the login functionality, which is login using email and password. So any user who has registered using email and password is not able to log in, but other social media account logins are working. Now this is the candidate of regression because login module is same. So that login module, if something is changed or something is fixed in that particular module, it could also impact the login of social media account or the users who have signed up with social media account as well, right? So there is a possibility, right? So you have mentioned that correctly, that regression testing
Yes.
is testing that the changes in your code or in the functionality do not impact any related functionality of the application. Okay, so you can give similar sort of examples. Just think of
Okay.
couple of other real life examples. You will come with lots and lots of example. Okay, just stick to this one and think of many other
Okay.
scenarios. You will just, when you go to sleep, okay, just think a little bit before you sleep, think a little bit about these things, whatever you have read, and you will figure out that you will get a lots and lots of example. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Let's move on. So we are almost around an hour. So let's move to the next question, and this is the last question for the interview today. So I'll give you a scenario. So I want you to give me a test coverage for a text box field. So imagine there is a web page, there is a text box field which accepts minimum two characters and maximum 6 characters. So can you give me some of the, test coverage or test cases that you will do for this scenario, for this text box?
Yes, sir. Where I'll initially where I'll enter maximum characters like 7 characters. I'll check whether it is accepts or not, and where I'll enter minimum 1 character. I'll check whether it is accepts or not, and where I'll enter some between 2 and 6 characters. I'll check whether it is accepted or any error will come, and I'll check the combinations of some alphabet and numerics between 2 to 6 characters, where it will, I'll check it accepts or not.
Yeah, yeah. So absolutely correct there. So you will start with 7 1, right? So you got to know that what is the boundary. Now I have specified that it accepts 2 characters and maximum 6 characters, and you have picked up that very well, right? So this is where you have applied your boundary value analysis skill a little bit, right? So this is what interviewer is looking for, whether you know that concept, and I can understand that you know the concept and you have applied that. You started with 7, right? So because it accepts 6, you'll check with 7. It should not accept 7, it should not accept 2. Okay, 2 test cases there. Then you mentioned about you will start with 2 3 4 5 and 6, and then you will start with uppercase, lowercase, special characters, combination of number and uppercase and lowercase. There are a number of possibilities there. Okay, so you will go ahead and explain all these scenarios. um, so apart from these, there are a couple of other things. So for example, uh, let me write it some. Okay, so there are like, you will also do some of more negative like spaces. Okay, so say you put 2 characters and then you put a space and then again 3 characters. What will happen? Or there is a preceding space and then some characters. So there are so many that you can think of, but the first 2 that you have gave are must. Okay, which you have already included. You have included different alphabets, special characters. So make sure you specify first 2, then special characters, uppercase, lowercase, numerics, special characters you have already specified, spaces, right? So all those sort of things, just come up with, if you Google, you will find many more test cases that you can think of in this particular case. But I think 5 6 7 test cases, if you specify, that you have mentioned, should be good enough. Okay, because they just want to understand, you will specify boundary value or not in this case. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this answer.
Okay.
Any other questions? So this brings to our to the end of our interview today. And any questions from me, Sanket?
Yes, sir. Where I'm facing in my internship issues, like I have on a registration page.
Yeah.
In that we can write test cases like n number of test cases as I mentioned here for text fields. If I write to start all cases, it will be take around 100 115 test cases. Then it will be, is it good or is it bad? So that's what I want to know.
So the testing principle. So have you read about the testing principles?
Yes, sir, I know, sir.
So there is one principle
Seven
which
principles are
says,
there.
yeah, there is one principle which says exhaustive testing is not possible, right? So when you try to, even with this
Yes,
particular
sir.
case, right, this text box, even though if it accepts 6 characters and minimum 2 characters and max 6 characters, if you start coming up with all the permutations and combinations, it will be hundreds of test cases there, and that's not what you should be doing. Okay, that's where boundary value analysis, equivalence, partitioning, all these things come in picture. Now what you have given the answer for this case, You have taken the negative scenarios, so a couple of negative scenarios. Okay, you have taken the boundary, take the boundary scenarios, take a couple of negative scenarios, couple of positive scenarios. In the positive scenario, two characters, three character, four, five, six, combination of some of these. Okay. And if you have time, if you do not have too much time, you try to reduce that number to manageable part which covers the most basic aspect of the functionality. Okay. And then try to automate the rest. That's where automation is helpful. Automation will still won't be able to cover 100% of your combination. It's not good to do it. I mean, it's not going to add any extra value. It's not going to find you more defects if you're trying to do all permutation combination. If you have covered the partitions properly, the partition behavior won't change if you put 567 in it or you put 999 in it, right? That's how the software and logic is built, that it's not going to change in much way. So to answer your question about the registration functionality, no, you are not going to write hundreds and hundreds of test cases. Okay, you have to think about what
Okay.
positive and negative test cases you need to cover, which will cover the major aspect of the functionality. Apply the same approach that you have answered me. Okay, do not leave the boundaries. So
Okay,
any
sir.
boundaries that are there, so first thing, any partitions that you need to test, have the partitions. All the boundary conditions will be your test cases, and some of the test cases from those partitions. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything practical or anything at work that you want to clarify?
Sir, may I know the feedback means when what area I should improve in what um, that
Yeah.
what are the any extra points added in my resume?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It also
Right.
I should know, sir.
Okay. So let's start with your resume. Okay. So your resume, I find it's okay. Uh, not too good, too bad, but it could be improved. First thing on the resume is you need to remove your personal details there. Okay. Uh, Nobody needs that. No
Okay.
date of birth, nothing. That's not required. Okay. Uh, in terms of your academic information, yes, you have provided your professional experience. In the professional experience, what exactly you have done in in those 2 years? Okay, elaborate a little bit. And if you have done something relevant to IT in those 2 years, highlight those. Okay, you would have definitely done something, because there is no place nowadays where you do not have IT systems. Okay, if it is bank, it is mechanical, there are IT systems. You would have definitely worked on something, put all that experience there. Okay, in the software skills, uh, it's very basic. I mean, you know a lot of things, but you haven't put in here. Okay, so put skills, whatever things that you have learned, put all of that here. In the term of technical summary, automation testing, go through the videos, try to automate couple of test cases, expand this. Similarly, manual testing, try to expand it, because your manual testing concepts are good. So you can write a lot more there. Okay. Now, this is just because you are a fresher.
Okay.
Okay. So you can elaborate a little bit, but do not make a 6 page or 7 page resume. Make sure it doesn't exceed 3 pages, but it contains all the key information that you know about. Okay. And similarly, like manual Java, and the strengths you have mentioned there, so that's all good. Just implement whatever things I have mentioned, and whatever things I think you should mention based on the discussion that we have. So that comes to your CV part or resume part. Now, coming to the feedback, many of your answers were correct theoretically. So that's absolutely fine. There were some answers which you gave really good. And I found that you have actually either experienced on those, or you have actually thought about it and you have learned them in detail. Okay. But then there are some questions that you need to think in a similar way. Examples are the first thing that you should always have in mind for any questions that need to be asked. Okay, you can learn the theory concept and you have explained all the theoretical answers very well, but add a couple of examples with those questions. Overall, your interview
Okay.
needs to improve. Okay, so overall, it's good as of it is now. Okay, to for a fresher, I don't see that you will not get any job, right? I mean, you will definitely get job in 15-20 days if you properly go ahead and hunt for the job. Your concepts are absolutely clear, and once you are given chance, you will definitely be able to excel in the software testing field, because you know the concept. If I'll give you a feature to test, you will write the test cases, you will do it. So you will definitely get through. It's just the presentation part and the example part. Okay, how you approach the question, how you will start, and then how you will back up that question with the example. That's the only feedback. Your knowledge is
Okay,
absolutely
sir.
fine, your experience is absolutely fine, and there is nothing to worry about that you are not prepared to go ahead and attend any interview. Okay, whatever feedback that I have given, it won't take
Yes.
more than a week or two to implement that. All right,
Okay.
because
Okay.
I have been taking interviews for so long, the actual, the company interviews, and people after 3 to 4 years of experience coming for a job are not able to answer the questions that I have asked to you today. Okay, so they are not able to answer the test cases for the text boxes and all, with 2 to 3 years working in the industry. So that's why I'm saying you have very good skills to definitely get into the testing. Just implement the feedback I have given you. Okay. Anything else that we need to discuss?
We'll have a second round for other some questions, sir.
Yeah, definitely. So there are a couple of more people in the pipeline. Once they are done, okay, we'll have a second round for automation. Okay, are you comfortable with that for Selenium automation?
Okay, sir.
And now what I want you to do is you
Sure, sir. I'll be
go.
preparing meanwhile.
Yes, yes. So, and it will be basic Selenium. I mean, it won't be going into too much detail, but just go ahead and start learning Selenium. There are so many tutorials out there. I'm not saying, just go ahead and watch mine. If you can't understand with my tutorial series, go and watch from someone who has taught it much better than me. Okay, but based on the comments that I get the feedback that I have taught them very well. So I think you should be able to understand. So if you watch just 15-20 tutorials in the beginning, you will be able to answer all the Selenium questions that I'll be asking. Okay, so it will be a mix of Selenium, a bit of API,
Okay,
and a
sir.
bit of manual testing. So second round for you will be a challenge sort of interview, and it will be for a level of approximately 3 years, 2 to 3 years experience person. Okay, so that you know that what you have learned in
Okay,
these 2 3 weeks. Okay,
okay, sir.
all right. Okay, so anything else? Otherwise, we'll call it a day and end the interview.
Nothing.
All right, cool. So
It
thank
was
you very
great
much.
pleasure to have you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Sanket, and it was a pleasure talking to you. And we'll catch up again in a couple of weeks. All right, thank you again for joining the call.
Okay, thank you.